Alright guys, and welcome back to the channel, and today I will be giving you my full card predictions and full card breakdown for UFC 322 live Saturday, November 15th from Madison Square Garden, and I absolutely cannot wait to get into it, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into the very first fight of the night, which is Mariscal versus Pat Sabatini, and this is a very interesting fight here at featherweight. Looking over on the right side, Pat Sabatini is a very solid, strong grappler with excellent jiu-jitsu. His grappling and his jiu-jitsu is his bread and butter. He's got very good locks, very good body control, and he's able to get a lot of guys down and just control them on the floor. He hunts those submissions very well. He is a little chinny. He has been knocked out once or twice in the past, so he's had some ups and downs, but, his grappling and his jiu-jitsu is easily his top shelf threat. And then we look over on the left side at Mariscal, and Mariscal is an absolute dog. And when you think of dogs in the UFC, guys that are just incredibly tough, always come forward, always have a ton of pressure, have granite chins, are so hard to hurt and back them off you. Mariscal is in the top 5 of that list. This guy he's a workhorse, he's a train, and he's always coming at you. And in this matchup, it's a very fun fight, very interesting styles colliding here. But when I look over at Mariscal, I just see that dog that is just built to break you. His style, his pressure, he's always coming forward. You're not ever really going to hurt him, and he's just going to put it on you and put it on you and just poke holes in your gas tank as the fight goes, and he is going to drain you. He's going to drag you out, beat you up, drag you down, and drain you. And Pat Sabatini is very dangerous early with that grappling, but I think in this fight that Mariscal is just going to put that pressure on him, survive that first round, poke holes in that gas tank, and just drown him in the deep waters. And I think Mariscal has all the tools to outdog Pat Sabatini. I don't think Pat is going to submit him. Pat is not going to knock him out, and I don't think Pat is going to outgrapple him. So I am going to go Mariscal by decision in this one. All right, we are moving on up to a very exciting fight in Malcolm Wellmaker versus Cody Haddon, and this is a super exciting fight here at bantamweight. And when we look over at the Malcolm Wellmaker side, man, this kid has looked absolutely incredible since he has come into the UFC. Some of the best pure striking, some of the most insane knockout power we have seen from a young prospect. And I mean, this kid's striking is so sharp. He has absolute military missiles in both of his hands, and he just flows so well. He's incredibly dangerous, and he reminds me of a Joshua Van. Joshua Van right now is one of the best strikers in the company. Comes forward, amazing boxing, such crisp head movement, and he's just so good. But you look at Malcolm Wellmaker, man, and the kid is just precise, he's accurate, and he's a sniper. And you look over at Cody Haddon, and he's looked good, had a good win over a year ago. It's been a long time, but against Dan Argueta, before that, Billy Brand over on Dana White's Contender Series, a very solid prospect out of Australia at 27 years old. But I look over at Malcolm Wellmaker, and that power is just different. It's scary, it's precise, and it is explosive. And, even though Cody Haddon has looked pretty solid so far, what I have seen from Malcolm Wellmaker is just like, oh, this kid's a problem. This is a future top 10 contender, top 10 prospect, and even a possible future title contender. This kid is very sharp and very dangerous. And, even though Cody Haddon is probably going to be competitive for a little bit, I think Malcolm Wellmaker is just too fluid, too fast, too powerful, and he's got absolute missiles in his hands, and this kid is going to style on Cody Haddon. And, I'm a believer right now. I'm a believer of this hype train so far. Unless Malcolm Wellmaker runs into a high-level grappler, I think he's going to be a problem for a lot of guys like Joshua Van is. So I am going to go ahead and pick Malcolm Wellmaker to continue his streak and knock Cody Haddon out in the first round, because I just cannot see any lower level new guys standing up to this kind of power right now. It's just different, and it's incredible, and Malcolm Wellmaker is red hot right now. So I am going to go Malcolm Wellmaker by first round KO in this one. All right, and we are moving on up to Roman Kopylov versus Gregory RoboCop Rodrigues, and this is such a interesting fight. One of the best fights of the night and one of the closest fights of the night. This is a very, very interesting mirror matching style almost, and Roman Kopylov has looked very good in his UFC run. He has had some losses. He did lose the fight to Anthony Hernandez, and you cannot knock him for that because Anthony Hernandez is an absolute freight-train dog, and he is the middleweight Cain Velasquez with that grappling, that wrestling, and that pressure. But, we can give him a pass there. Picked up a pretty good win, kickboxing win over Cesar Almeida. Then the win over Chris Curtis, that last second head kick that was, having Chris Curtis protest, but he was hurt and pretty much done. And then he had a very underwhelming performance against Paulo Costa, and he kind of just stood there. He didn't really do anything in that fight. He froze up, and Paulo just kept busy and outworked him. But, you can give him a little bit of leniency in that fight, a tiny bit, but, not a whole lot, because it just was kind of weird that Kopylov just didn't get in his face, didn't pressure him, and didn't put hands on him. But if you just stand there in front of Paulo Costa, he's just going to outwork you. That's just plain and simple. But then you look over at Gregory RoboCop Rodrigues, man, and he is just an absolute Terminator. He is what is in his name, RoboCop. I mean, the man is he's built out of steel. He looks like he's 45 years old. I mean, he looks old as shit, but he's only 33, which is insane. He kind of has Minotauro Nogueira syndrome, where like Minotauro Nogueira looked like he was 48 years old, but back in the day, he was like 32. It's insane. Like, they look so much older. But I mean, Gregory RoboCop Rodrigues, I mean, he's got, excellent striking, great jiu-jitsu. He's very big, very menacing, and just in his presence and his style when he comes at you, and he puts hands on you, and he's got a pretty good gas tank too, and Kopylov's good, he's tactical, he's slick, he picks his shots well, but sometimes Kopylov will kind of sit back and he'll wait a little too much, and he'll hesitate, and he's kind of just throwing one strike at a time, one strike here and there, and he's not really throwing fluid combinations. But Gregory Rodrigues, on the other hand, is always busy. He's always throwing. He's always coming at you. And even though I would love to pick Kopylov in this fight to get back on track because he's still a very good prospect and has a lot of potential, I'm worried that he's going to stand in front of Gregory Rodrigues in this fight and not do enough. And then RoboCop is just going to get in his face and put it on him. And, he's just not going to let off with that pressure. And he's very well-rounded. He can go to the ground. He's got jiu-jitsu. He's got solid hands, and he can outwork you. So even though it's a very close fight, and I don't want to count Roman Kopylov out, I mean, if Roman Kopylov comes out in this fight and wants the win and turns up the pressure, he could very well easily win this fight. But that Paulo Costa performance was really concerning, and I would assume he's going to make adjustments from that fight, but I don't know if I can trust it enough to outwork Gregory RoboCop Rodrigues, because Rodrigues is just, he really is a RoboCop. He keeps coming, he doesn't stop, he's made out of steel, and he's hard to deal with. So in that case, I am going to have to side with RoboCop in this fight because he's busy. He's a workhorse, and you have to trust a workhorse in a fight over a guy that sometimes just sits back and picks his shots and just kind of has a little bit of these stalemate moments. And I am just going to go ahead and trust that Gregory's going to be a little busier, a little more accurate, and it's going to look optically good to the judges. The busier fighter is going to look better to the judges. So I am going to go ahead and say Gregory RoboCop Rodrigues picks up this win 29-28, and it could be very close. It could be a split decision. It could be a razor close fight, but I think Rodrigues will do enough to get this win over Roman Kopylov. All right, and now we are moving on up to a very interesting grappling fight in Bo Nickal versus Rodolfo Vieira, and a very interesting kind of mirror match style here, and we look over at the left, we look at Bo Nickal, and I am not a Bo Nickal fan at all. I have never understood the hype train for him. I thought he was very overrated, and then sure enough, you saw in his last fight, he got steamrolled by Rainer de Ritter and just got, walked forward, got kneed in the body, beat up, and TKO'd, and that pretty much derailed that train. But, Bo Nickal is solid. He's got good grappling. He's got pretty good hands, explosive striking sometimes. But, outside of that, you look over at Rodolfo Vieira, and he is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, phenom. His Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very good. It's very top shelf. And, the one thing with Rodolfo is that he's got a lot of muscle. He's a very bulky guy. and he has struggled with cardio in past fights, and that's kind of hurt him, in his loss against Chris Curtis, and then his loss to Andre Petrosky. He was kind of struggling with the cardio and getting outworked and outstruck, but he's got very solid jiu-jitsu. It's just that muscle mass and that cardio that tends to be a problem with him. And the one thing that I look at in this fight, is that Bo Nickal is an excellent grappler. He does have good jiu-jitsu, and he has great cardio. If you're not kneeing him in the body like Rainer de Ritter and sapping his gas tank, his cardio is great. And Bo is young. He's 29. He's kind of approaching his prime, 6'1", 76-inch reach, and he's up against an aging kind of, light veteran at this point, and he's going to have a big reach advantage over Rodolfo Vieira. And I think he can kind of keep it on the outside, outstrike him a little bit, and then I think he can wind up out-grappling Rodolfo as the fight goes. I think Rodolfo's going to be strong in the first round, and it's going to be real close and competitive, but I feel like as the fight goes, Nickal is just going to wind up out-grappling him, outstriking him, and outworking him. And I'm going to go ahead and say that Bo Nickal gets back on track in this fight, just with the better striking from the outside, popping shots, able to control Rodolfo, not get taken down as much, and I think he can get takedowns of his own. So there's a possibility he submits Rodolfo, but I don't think Rodolfo's ever been submitted, and if he has, it's been once, but I'm pretty sure he's never been submitted. So I don't think Bo Nickal's going to wind up getting that, but I think he can outwork Rodolfo Vieira to a decision. So we're going to go Bo Nickal by decision in this one. All right, and now we are moving on up to Gerald Meerschaert versus Kyle Daukaus, and this is a super, super interesting fight here at middleweight, and Gerald Meerschaert at this point, he's a long-time veteran, he's been around a long time, but Gerald Meerschaert is not that good. He's very, very up and down, and he's more down than he is up, and he's had a lot of losses, Gerald Meerschaert is slow on the feet, he's clunky on the feet, he's got a poor chin, and his jiu-jitsu is nasty if he can bring you into his world. If he can pull guard, he's active from the bottom, he can lock you up from the bottom. If he gets on top of you, he's an absolute problem. But outside of that, Gerald Meerschaert is just not good in his technique. He's not fluid, he's not fast, he's stiff, he's upright, he's flat-footed, chin out. And when he gets hit, he starts going glazy-eyed and just backing up, and you can tell, like, oh yeah, he's about to accept defeat. He's not going to make an effort, and he's done. And then he gets knocked out. And you look at all these losses that he's had, Rainer de Ritter, Brad Tavares outworking him, and then Michael Oleksiejczuk knocking him out, and now Gerald Meerschaert has had his chin cracked so many times, and he's 37 years old. He's approaching his 40s, and he's not going to get any better. His ceiling is already here, and it's pretty low. And then you look over at Kyle Daukaus, and here's what's crazy about Kyle Daukaus is his original run in the UFC was not that good. He had a lot of losses. He was struggling, and then he got cut. And when he got cut, he went on to the regionals and he started to get better. He improved, and then he picked up a lot of wins, and then he came back to the UFC. And in his UFC return, he shocked the world, and he knocked out Michel Pereira, which was absolutely crazy, because if you know Michel Pereira, he's one of the most dynamic, dangerous storms in the middleweight division. That guy's an absolute tornado. He is so hard to deal with, very explosive, a lot of high-level movement. I mean, he's kind of like Yuri Prochazka. He's kind of like a lower-level Yuri Prochazka, and he's very dangerous. And Kyle Daukaus caught him with a shot and knocked him out, and you're like, whoa, that is a statement. That is a statement to make your second return to the UFC, and I mean a huge one at that. It's kind of like Youssef Zalal. Youssef Zalal was struggling in the early half of his first UFC run. He went off to the regionals, got so much better, came back, and now Youssef Zalal is like approaching a title shot, So Kyle Daukaus, to knock out Michel Pereira like that was incredibly impressive, and I think he's here to make a statement. I think he means business, and I think this kid is now going to be a problem at 32, and he's probably approaching his prime right now. He's right on the upside of his prime, so I think he has all the tools to get in Gerald Meerschaert's face and put him away fast. And Kyle Daukaus is also a jiu-jitsu practitioner. His jiu-jitsu is fantastic. He's got a lot of submission wins. He's great on the ground. And I think if him and Gerald Meerschaert go to the ground, I think Daukaus beats him there all day. And now Daukaus has developed hands. I mean, I think it's a problem, and I think he's going to get in Gerald Meerschaert's face, and I think he's going to put him away. He's either going to knock him out early, or he's going to drop him, hurt hurt him, grab a neck, grab an arm, and he's going to tap him. So I am going to go ahead and say Kyle Daukaus makes good on his second UFC fight in his return, and I think he's going to put Gerald Meerschaert away. So we are going his brother, that's his brother, Kyle Daukaus by first round KO. All right, and we are moving on up to Angela Overkill Hill versus Fatima Kline, and a pretty interesting fight here at strawweight. You know, and I think this is a pretty simple cut and dry fight. Angela Hill is a veteran. You know, she's got good kickboxing, pretty solid, good chin. She's not great in any one particular area. She doesn't have power. She doesn't have laser hands. She doesn't have jiu-jitsu. She doesn't have really good grappling. But she's just a good, busy, mild, you know, kind of just striker on the feet. And Angela Hill's been around a long time. She was on The Ultimate Fighter back in the day, and she's had a lot of good wins. She's had a good career. You know, she's 18-15. Some of those are coming from the regionals, those 15 losses. But, I mean, Angela hasn't done too bad, but, you know, she's 40 years old. She's never going to be a champion. She's never going to get any better, and she's at her ceiling. And now I think she's starting to slow down with her last loss to Lasmine Lucindo. So I think Angela Hill is going to be in trouble in this fight, and we look over at Fatima Kline, and she has looked fantastic. I mean, she's got great striking, good cardio, good pace, and she works, and she's very well-rounded, and she's only 25. And she is going to have a 3-inch height advantage over Angela Hill in this fight, and she's going to have about a 3 to 4 inch advantage over Angela Hill in the reach. So I think Fatima Kline just has all the potential in this fight to just completely outwork an aging, declining Angela Hill. And I think Angela's going to stay in there. I don't think Fatima's going to finish her. I don't think she's going to hit her with a big shot and TKO her. She could, but Angela Hill's been historically very tough. But I think Fatima Kline is just going to simply outwork Angela Hill in this fight. And I think she's going to pick up a pretty easy 30-27 in the process. So we're going to go Fatima Kline in this one. All right, and we are moving on up to Bazangur Susurkaev versus Eric Moicano, and a pretty fun fight here at middleweight. And, you know, Bazangur made his debut back a few months ago, and, you know, he looked pretty decent in that fight. You know, it was competitive, it was a little back and forth, but he eventually wound up getting the rear naked choke over Eric Nolan, and I believe he trains with Khamzat Chimaev, geez. And, you know, him and Khamzat are I think they're very close training partners. And, you know, Khamzat has said some very good things about this kid. So I think that he's got some potential showing off what he did in that last fight, you know, and he trains at a very good gym with a world champion now, you know, and the kid is looking, you know, he's looking like he's a problem. He's only 24 years old. But then you look over at the Eric Moicano side, you know, and he just hasn't looked very good. Yeah, he came off a win against Cody Brundage, but Cody Brundage is very low level, very barely even mid, and he barely won that fight. So, you know, and then before that, he got knocked out by the gigantic Nursultan Ruziboev, who is a massive, massive welterweight who's now at middleweight, I believe. And, you know, he just hasn't looked that impressive. And I think in this fight, I think it's just going to be the new prospect that's undefeated is going to continue. He's going to put that pressure on Moicano. He's going to have the better striking. He's got good kicks to the body, and he's got power. And then he's got that Dagestan Russian grappling in his back pocket if he needs it. So I think Bazangur is going to come forward, get in Moicano's face, pressure him, break him, and I think by the second round, he's going to get comfortable, and I think he's going to TKO Eric Moicano. Moicano just kind of seems to be just kind of a punching bag, just a guy that's there, decent movement, decent hands, but I think Bazangur is here for a reason. He trains with Khamzat and is promoted by Khamzat for a reason, and I think he will pick up the win here. So we are going to go Bazangur by second round KO in this one. All right, and we are moving on up very speedily to Erin Blanchfield versus Tracy Cortez 2, and I just realized this is a rematch. I don't even remember their first fight, but regardless, you know, very fun fight here at women's flyweight. You know, when we look at Erin Blanchfield, who has been, you know, one of the toughest tests in the division, picking up a ton of great wins. Jessica Andrade, Molly McCann, Talia Santos, and then in her last fight beating Rose Namajunas, a former champion and one of the best strikers in the division. So that was a huge feather in Erin Blanchfield's cap, you know, and she's very good. Her only loss was Manon Fiorot, and that was about a year and a half ago now, and Manon Fiorot is one of the best pure boxers in the division, so not knocking her there, but Erin Blanchfield is still very good, you know, and she's not going anywhere. She's still a top-level, top-5 threat. And then you look over at Tracy Cortez. Tracy Cortez is just okay, nothing special. Not a particularly great striker, not a particularly great grappler or jiu-jitsu artist, but she's solid. She's just kind of there. She's kind of hanging around, and she does okay. She's picked up some very solid wins. She's 12-2, coming off a win against Viviane Araújo, a very solid Brazilian fighter. And that she looked pretty good in that fight. It was a competitive fight, but I think in this fight there is going to be a massive difference in skill here because Erin Blanchfield is just purely a better striker. She's got much better jiu-jitsu and much better grappling, and she's very much, in a much better sense, just a more well-rounded fighter. She's able to mix things up so well, and she's a very intelligent fighter. And I just cannot see in this fight Tracy Cortez outstriking her. I can't see Tracy Cortez taking her down, out-grappling her. I don't see any area where Tracy Cortez is really going to win this fight. And even though it could be somewhat competitive early, I think Erin Blanchfield is just flat out the better fighter everywhere. And I think Erin Blanchfield will pick up a decision over Tracy Cortez. It could be lightly close. Maybe Tracy steals a round. I doubt it. Erin Blanchfield picks up a 29-28, but I think Erin Blanchfield is just pretty much going to comfortably pick up this win, most likely a 30-27. So we are going to go Erin Blanchfield by decision in this one. All right, and now we are moving on up to a very, very exciting fight in Sean Brady versus Michael Morales, and I absolutely love this fight. This is such a good fight. Now, we look over on the Sean Brady side, and Sean Brady has steadily become one of the biggest problems in the welterweight division, pretty much a top 5 problem. And, Sean Brady did have a hiccup a few years ago against Belal Muhammad, had a pretty underwhelming performance in that fight. That was 3 years ago already, which is crazy. Time is flying. That feels like that was like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. But he did have the underwhelming performance against Belal Muhammad, but then he got back on track, submitting Kelvin Gastelum, beating Gilbert Burns, a very high-level jiu-jitsu practitioner and grappler, and then he beat Leon Edwards, which is easily his, biggest feather in his cap, beating and submitting and dominating a former champion. And Sean Brady has just put it together, man. That grappling, that cardio, he is a tank. He is a strong, sturdy guy, and he's got excellent control, great power in his clinch, and he's very hard to deal with. But then you look over at Michael Morales, and he has been one of the most impressive young strikers in the company. He is right up there with Joshua Van and Malcolm Wellmaker, but he has a little lightly more experience now than Malcolm Wellmaker, kind of right there with Joshua Van, but I mean, he's looked so good. Absolutely beautiful striking, and this kid reminds me of a young Anthony Rumble Johnson. Rest in peace, Rumble Johnson. He was one of my favorite fighters, such an incredible guy. Gone too soon, but Michael Morales just reminds me of a young Anthony Rumble Johnson. His build, his size, his movement, his presence, and his striking is so good. And he's picked up so many great wins against, Max Griffin, Jake Matthews, who's very solid, Neil Magny, a veteran, and then Gilbert Burns, beating Gilbert Burns, and the kid is just phenomenal, and he's 18-0 for a reason. And I went back and forth on this fight because I can see a world where if Sean Brady cannot get a hold of this kid, Michael Morales is going to light him up and make him pay, and it's going to be bad. And Sean Brady's a good striker himself, but this kid, I mean, he is slick, and he's got a massive reach advantage over Sean Brady. So Sean Brady cannot sit on the outside with this kid, or he is going to get clipped, he's going to get beat up, and he's probably going to get knocked out. So on the feet, Michael Morales is going to win that striking exchange, the vast majority of the time. And it's going to be a very, very interesting puzzle for Sean Brady to solve, to try to get in on that range, get outside, of that perimeter, shoot in on, get inside that perimeter and shoot in on Michael Morales and try to get these takedowns. Because if he stays on that outer range and he stays at the end of Michael Morales' shots, it is going to be a tough and a bad night for him. So Sean Brady's got to close the gap, get past that long striking, get in on those hips, and he's got to take him down. And I went back and forth on it because I could see a world where Michael Morales can keep this light on the feet, stay on the outside, keep him back with the jab, and stuff some takedowns, avoid some takedowns. But if Sean Brady shoots in on those hips and gets clean, lockups under that hip, and he gets these clean double legs, he's going to take Michael Morales down. And Michael Morales has not fought a grappler on this current level. Gilbert Burns is very good, a very good grappler, but Gilbert Burns is on the decline and he's aging. Sean Brady's in his prime, and he's a tank, and I think Sean Brady would beat Gilbert Burns in grappling right now. So It's a tough fight. I went back and forth on it, but I am going to go ahead and side with Sean Brady because this is a very tough step up for Michael Morales. He's never fought a grappler at this level, and Sean Brady's a very intelligent fighter. I think he can get in on Michael Morales, get underneath that long frame, that huge reach advantage, grab those legs, get him down, and I think he can wind up just kind of blanketing Michael Morales and stuffing him out. But if not, if he can't get on the hips and he gets stuck on the outside, Michael Morales is going to pick him apart, probably knock him out, and pull off the biggest win of his life. So I am going to go Sean Brady with the veteran experience, the grappling, to get in on the hips, get those takedowns, and lock up this win. So I'm going to go Sean Brady by decision in this one. All right, and moving on up, we are looking at Beneil Dariush versus Benoit Saint-Denis in a very fun fight here at lightweight, and Beneil Dariush, man, like he has had a very up and down career, man, but he's been very solid in moments. We look at the fight that he had years ago with Drakkar Klose, where he was hurt and almost knocked out, and then he hit Drakkar with a shot, hunted him down, knocked his mouthpiece out. I mean, one of the greatest comebacks in a fight of all time. But, Beneil's also been plagued with injuries and a lot of time off. And then, he picked up some very solid wins, Tony Ferguson, Mateus Gamrot, and then he got knocked out by Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan. But then he looked really good in the Renato Moicano fight, and he was on the shelf for a long time, and I thought Moicano was going to win that fight, but Beneil outlasted him. He got Moicano tired, outstruck him, and he just looked really good in that fight. But then Benoit Saint-Denis, on the other hand, was looking really good in his first few UFC fights, and then he ran into the Iron Wall legend Dustin Poirier. He got knocked outstruck, and just caught in that fight. And he was battling, I believe, staph in that fight. He was on antibiotics, and you could tell it just drained his cardio. And then he did get beat up by, Money Moicano, got cut up real bad. But then he got back on track with the win against Kyle Prepolek, and then Mauricio Rufy kind of, shutting him down. So, Benoit Saint-Denis, he's still very dangerous, and he still has so much potential at 29 years old. And I think he's kind of getting back on track here. He's the younger fighter. Beneil's 36, getting up there, almost 37. And even though he looked good against Money Moicano, Moicano's not that good. Moicano is kind of mid-level. He's all right. But, I wasn't blown away with the performance. And I think in this fight that Benoit is just going to be younger. He's going to be quicker. He's going to hit harder. And Benoit has finished all of his fights. I don't think he's had any fights go to a decision. And, Beneil's got great jiu-jitsu. He's got good defense there. He's good on the ground. But I think Benoit is just going to outwork him in this fight, outpace him, outstrike him. And I think Benoit, at some point in the second round, is going to catch Beneil with a big shot, hurt him, kind of like Charles Oliveira did, and just TKO him. I don't think he'll submit Beneil, because I don't think Beneil's ever been submitted. But if he does, that's a huge feather in the cap. But I'm going to say Benoit stays on track, gets a third win under his belt, puts the pressure on the aging Beneil, and he's just going to be a harder level fight than Moicano was for Beneil. So I am going to say Benoit Saint-Denis by second round KO in this one. All right, and we are moving on up to one of the most exciting fights of the night, and I absolutely cannot wait for this. One of my favorite fighters right now. We are looking at Leon Rocky Edwards versus Carlos Prates, and boy, this is going to be such a fun fight. And we were looking over at the champ, former champ, Leon Edwards. Leon's had such a storied career, he from where he came all the way climbing up the mountain to beating all of these guys and making it to Kamaru Usman and being down in that fight, losing the entire fight, and then, right at the end, when it's looking so depressing and so dejecting and like he has no hope, his coach puts a fire under him and he comes out and hits Kamaru Usman with the head kick from hell and shocks the world, and Leon has just been, he's a UFC veteran. He's had so many great wins, a few tough losses, here and there, but, his comeback story to win that belt was just phenomenal. And then, he went on to defend it against Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman in the rematch, and then Colby Covington, Usman twice, then Colby Covington, but then he ran into the wall of Bilal Muhammad, and in that fight, Leon Edwards just did not look good. He looked like he didn't want to be there. He looked mentally checked out. He just looked flat, and he pretty much said, in the post-fight, he was like, I just didn't want to be there. I didn't feel like I wanted to be in the fight. I felt weird all week, and he just looked flat-footed. And we saw what Leon did to Beneil years ago in the Apex, just piecing him up, cracking him. And you're like, where was the old Leon there? Where was that killer instinct Leon? And he just didn't have it in that fight, and Beneil took his belt pretty easily, and then he ran into Sean Brady and got dominated. So it's really hard to tell with Leon because it just looks like he's in this mental headspace of maybe he doesn't want to fight anymore. Maybe he just doesn't have it anymore. And he's still 34. He's not that old. He still has a huge, a huge chunk of, career left there, in the next, 5 years or so. So it's been really, deflating for him. But, Leon's still very talented, but it's just hard to see where he is at mentally, and it looks like possibly he might be on a small decline. But, you look over at Carlos Prates, and this guy is an absolute nightmare, and his nickname is more than justified because this guy is an absolute assassin. The scariest striker in the UFC outside of Alex Pereira, and I call him the welterweight Alex Pereira. He's the same build, the same frame, the same southpaw stance, the same nasty left hook. I mean, Carlos Prates is a scary man, and I have loved him from the minute he has stepped foot into the cage. I mean, his Muay Thai, his kickboxing is incredible, and he is an absolute problem at 32 years old. Did have the very close, fight with Ian Gary. Did lose that fight. It was a winnable fight with some, adjustments and mistakes that he was making, but he started to pick it up at the end of that fight. It was just too little too late. But Carlos Prates has just looked absolutely incredible outside of that Ian Gary loss. And in this fight, Leon Edwards is, he's a veteran. He's a former champ. He's such a skilled, dangerous kickboxer when he wants to be. But I just don't know if Leon is there mentally anymore, and I cannot see him outstriking someone like Carlos Prates. And Carlos Prates is going to have a 4-inch reach on him with the speed advantage, in that long frame. I think it is going to be a nightmare recipe for Leon. And, I was hoping Leon could get back on track with his next fight, maybe against a kind of lower ranked guy, but they threw him Carlos Prates, and they're not doing him any favors because this is a real problem. And in this fight, I think it's going to be interesting for the first round. Leon's going to be trying to feel him out, and then Carlos is going to start to hunt him. And when Carlos starts hunting you and he locks on you, you are pretty much dead prey. You're dead. And I think Carlos Prates is going to be the faster striker, the quicker striker. I think he's going to be more accurate than Leon, and I think he's going to overwhelm Leon. And I am going to go ahead and say that Carlos Prates knocks Leon Edwards out in the second round. If not, he's taking a decision. He will outstrike Leon for 15 straight minutes. But looking at Leon's mental state and the downside of these last two losses, I think Carlos Prates can hunt him down and put a beating on him, and it's going to be a rough night for Leon. So I am going Carlos Prates to knock out the former champion and elevate himself to probably the next title shot. All right, and we are moving on up to one of the most interesting, tough fights of the night, and I cannot wait to talk about this. We are looking at Valentina Shevchenko versus Weili Zhang, and an absolutely incredible, mirror-matching, such a close, phenomenal fight here for the women's flyweight championship, and pretty much a women's super fight. It's so good on paper. And Valentina Shevchenko is one of my all-time favorite fighters. I think she is the greatest female fighter of all time. She beat Amanda Nunes back 7-8 years ago, got screwed in that fight, and her championship reign, all the wins that she's had. I mean, Valentina is just an absolute badass. She is just, and such a sweetheart, such a good person. And you look over at Weili Zhang, and she's had an absolutely incredible career, beating Jessica Andrade, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Carla Esparza. She did have the tough losses to Rose Namajunas, but she bounced back. And I mean, Weili Zhang is just still looking so good, beating Amanda Lemos, Yan Xiaonan, Tatiana Suarez kind of dominating her. And, it's just such a close fight on paper because Valentina is such a tactical counter striker. She's got great kickboxing, great kicks, and she's so just on that impulse to just lightning quick reflexes, lightning quick counter striking. She has such a strong core and such a strong base, and she's able to rip kicks to the body, counter strike you when you come in, hit you with all those proper shots. And then she's got great takedowns. We saw what she was able to do to Alexa Grasso in that rematch and just take her down and dominate her, and people give, Valentina a little bit of a hard time because they look at her loss to Alexa Grasso and go like, oh, look, she got choked out in that fight. But Valentina, people forget, Valentina was winning that fight, and she cost herself the fight by making a poor judgment mistake. She threw a spin kick, got her back taken, and choked out. And people seem to write Valentina off, but it's like she was winning that fight. If she doesn't throw that spin kick, she easily wins that fight. And then they had the rematch, and she won that fight, but Judge Mike Bell gave Grasso a 10-8 in a round and made the fight a draw, and it wasn't a draw. It wasn't a 10-8 round. Mike Bell's one of the worst judges out there. So Valentina should have won the rematch too. And then they had the third fight, and Valentina dominated her, So her grappling is so good. Her core strength, her base, her kicking, her Muay Thai is just top level. And Weili Zhang has phenomenal boxing. She has such good boxing. She mixes it up so well. And Weili Zhang has great pressure, great cardio. And she actually, on paper, is a slightly better boxer than Valentina. She has a higher strike percentage. But Valentina has a slightly higher takedown percentage. So, it's a very, very interesting close fight. And I went back and forth on this for so long, and I just picked it and nitpicked it. And I tried to make a case for Weili Zhang, and I really went, she could come forward, be a little busier, land a few more shots than Valentina, edge these rounds with slightly busier striking, and it could look really good to the judges. And she could pull off a 48-47, pull off a split decision. It's very possible. And I really wanted to go Weili Zhang because of that busier boxing and a little more activity. Because Valentina's more of a kind of wait with her hands up and then counter strike. And that could be to her detriment in this fight. But, oh, sorry guys, I just lost my light there. But if Valentina sits back too much in this fight, Weili Zhang could be busier and wind up overtaking her and edging these rounds with the judges optically. It could just look better to them that she's busier. But Valentina's so good at countering, and when she comes in, she's so good at just kicking and hitting and moving, and then, I guess my light is just not going to work. But, it's a really, really tough, close fight. And I went back and forth on it, and I think I am just going to have to settle on, I'm going to pick Valentina Shevchenko in this fight to land the slightly better counter strikes when Weili comes in, and she's going to be able to land kicks. And if she can land the appropriate shots, she might even be able to fake a kick to the body and go upstairs and head kick Weili Zhang. We saw what she did to Jessica Ai years ago, and kicked her in the head and knocked her out cold. So that's a very big possibility, and we saw what Rose Namajunas did to Weili Zhang, kicking her in the head and knocking her out. So Valentina could crack Weili Zhang with a big head kick. But I am going to go ahead and just lightly side with Valentina Shevchenko in this fight, and I think it's going to be razor close. I think it could be a split. And it could go to Weili Zhang, but I'm just going to go ahead and stick with Valentina because I never pick against her. It's so incredibly rare. I normally pick her in every fight, and I'm going to say Valentina picks up this win, and I'm going to say she does it 48-47. I think Weili Zhang can get 2 rounds under her belt with maybe slightly better boxing. But I think Valentina is such a good counter striker, and she's one of my all-time favorite fighters. I am going to go ahead and pick Valentina to prove she is the greatest female fighter of all time and to pick up this flyweight championship in a very close, competitive fight with Weili Zhang. All right, and now we are moving on up to one of the other toughest fights of the night in Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev. And such an incredible fight here on paper. We're looking over at Jack Della Maddalena, one of the best pure strikers in the UFC. I mean, the best striker in the welterweight division. Such incredibly crisp boxing. Some of the best hands you will ever see. And that striking is just so phenomenal. And you look over at Islam Makhachev, one of the most dangerous, high-level Russian grapplers we have ever seen. I mean, his grappling is next level. It's out of this world. His iron blanket pressure style to be able to hold guys down. His vice grip jiu-jitsu that is just, I mean, absolutely next level. And Islam Makhachev has just been such a problem for every single person he has fought. I mean, Charles Oliveira, Alexander Volkanovski in both fights, Dustin Poirier easily tapping Renato Moicano. I mean, and he is just an absolute Russian Terminator there. And Islam is moving up to try to claim this welterweight championship, and he's going to put on muscle. He's going to be stronger. He's not going to have to deal with a big cut, and that is going to play into Islam's strength. He's already such a strong fighter and such a strong grappler, but now he's not going to have a weight cut draining him. He's going to have more muscle, more energy, and it's a very intriguing matchup for Jack Della Maddalena because Jack Della Maddalena has not fought a grappler on this level. And what he was able to do with Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns was able to take him down, but he was able to get back up, and he was able to knock Gilbert Burns out. But Gilbert Burns is not on the grappling level of an Islam Makhachev. Then you had Belal Muhammad come in, and Belal Muhammad had a dumb game plan because he thought, I can stand with Jack and outstrike Jack. No, you can't, Belal. Your boxing is not that great. Jack Della Maddalena has excellent boxing, sharp, crisp, tactical hands, big power in his hands, smooth, fluid combinations, and Belal's striking is pretty mid. And he tried to come out and strike with Jack, and it backfired, and he got beat up. He was able to get a few takedowns on Jack, but he didn't do much with them, and Jack got up and beat him up for that. But the difference here is Islam Makhachev's grappling is on a whole other level outside of Belal Muhammad. I mean, you put Belal Muhammad and Islam Makhachev in a cage, and Islam Makhachev is out-grappling that man. So this is just a next level type of grappling that Jack has to deal with that he's never dealt with before. And if Islam can hold him down, take him down, hold him down, and just iron blanket him, it's going to be a very tough night for Jack Della Maddalena. If he can get back to his feet and drag it back into the striking realm that he's so good at, he could pull off one of the biggest upsets of all time. And I'm not counting Jack Della Maddalena out in this fight at all. If he can keep it on the feet, and if he can get up, he is going to outstrike Islam Makhachev and pull this off. And it's such a razor-close fight. And I went back and forth on it, and I could just see Jack shocking the world. He's going to get taken down in this fight, but can he survive? Can he get up? Can he start to hit Islam Makhachev with shots to the body and rip combinations and drain his gas tank and really start to turn the tide? And I can so see Jack doing it, and I wouldn't be surprised. But this is a next-level grappler who is much better than Belal Muhammad, who is levels above Gilbert Burns, and has one of the nastiest submission games of all time. And I just can't bring myself to see Jack Della Maddalena surviving Islam's grappling and surviving the submission attempts. Eventually, Islam is going to lock something up. And if Jack can defend it early and keep it on the feet, he's got a great chance, and he is going to beat Islam on the feet. But I just don't know if he's going to be able to survive this level of grappling and this level of technique. Iron blanket pressure and technique and such good body control. And even though it's so close, and Jack very well could pull this off if he can survive the grappling, I am going to go ahead and pick Islam Makhachev by third round submission in this fight. And it's close, and Jack could pull this off, but I mean, this is a next level grappler that he's never seen before in a different style of wrestling and cardio. And Islam's going to have extra muscle, extra cardio, extra energy. But if Islam isn't careful and he isn't fully prepared, Jack could pull this off and really bust him up and make him pay. But I am going to go Islam Makhachev and new, and I think it's going to be a very interesting fight. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like and subscribe. It massively helps me out, and I will see you with my predictions for UFC 323